Joe moving on. We were right back where we were 25 years ago, where I was as a kid, some of you as well. And so that's very, very frustrating. And I have a lot of my friends who do tobacco control who sit there and say, I cannot believe we're fighting this fight again. We are. The other thing is that I want you to know is that nicotine is extremely addictive. Some people would say even as, if not more, addictive than heroin. I talked to a user who does now some tobacco education, and he said, you know what, Bonnie, I both use nicotine in the form of cigarettes at the time, but nicotine and heroin, and nicotine was harder to stop using than heroin. And I've heard those stories many times. Another thing is it's really important to keep your kids from using all of these nicotine and tobacco products while they're adolescents, while their brains are still developing, to help prevent a lifelong issue of addiction. So now is the time, whether you're in elementary, middle, or high school, to get the prevention going now, to talk to your young people. The vaping industries, they're really great at what they do. You know, if I had their budget to do the work that they do to prevent, it would be amazing. They have so much money, so much power, so much research abilities, and they don't have to publish. You know, they do the research, they do the marketing, and they put it into action to promote their products. They're using tools and practices that we have seen before, and a lot of new ones now that we've got social media and other ways to communicate with our young people. So those are some of the conclusions. So there is some good news, which is cigarette smoking is down, and it's down a lot, and I'm going to show you those data. That's great. Not going to poo-poo or whatever the word would be, that great news. That is fantastic. But the bad news is our changing landscape of tobacco use. So here are some of the tobacco or electronic smoking devices, or e-cigarettes, or vaping products, or Juuls, whatever you want to call it. They kind of fall under this that we in public health would call e-cigarettes or electronic cigarettes. Your young people are probably calling them vaping, and to be honest, if they're using Juuls or the new pod-based, I'll show you those, are calling them Juuling. So I like to say e-cigarettes or electronic cigarettes because I'm stubborn and I believe in tobacco control, and I refuse to call them vaping products because, first of all, it's not vapor, it's aerosol, and also because that's what the industry wants you to call it, because they don't want the term cigarettes attached to it. But they are a form of a cigarette. It's an electronic cigarette. But if you are talking to your young people and you want them to listen, I did some work in LA Unified School District, and I asked about e-cigarettes, and everybody looked at me like, what are you talking about? Kids call them vapes, or they call it Juuling. They don't call it e-cigs, but I will. So what are they? On the far left, your far left, and my far left, I guess. These were what's considered to be the cig-alikes. They came on the market around 2007. And but they didn't really become popular until around 2014. These cig-alikes look like a cigarette, and I'll show you one a little bit more in a minute. A caricature of one, but they look like a cigarette. They did not deliver a huge amount of nicotine, and they did not deliver nicotine well. And the idea was to get adults to quit smoking, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then you've got variations. Sometimes there were e-hookahs or other e-forms or vape pens that came on, and those typically had a button on them, and they refilled. The ones on the left, far left, are disposable. You're done, you throw them out. Then you got to refillable, and they were better at delivering nicotine. So they had a higher dosage, they had higher heat, and they were just more effective. Then you get the mods, which are more likely to be used now, which are these boxes that look there. And I don't have those. The only ones I have are the far right ones with me. But the mods are large. You see them, they produce this huge plume of smoke that comes out, or vapor, or aerosol is more accurate, that comes out. And those they have a button on it, and they do actually produce a fair amount of nicotine into your body. They are more efficient at delivering that. Then we have the latest, which came on the market just a couple years ago, which are these pod-based products really made popular by Juul. And we're going to talk about those in a second. For all of these, except for the pod-based, what you need to do is either they come preloaded with the liquid that is in there, or e-juice or e-liquid, that's where the nicotine and the chemicals are in, or you have to buy a bottle like this and drip it in, or squeeze it in, or fill the tank, and then you breathe it in. One of the things to note, we'll talk about this a little more, but does have nicotine in it, most of them do, and these, one of them, if it's got full nicotine, can kill an entire class of kindergartners. That's how concentrated of nicotine is in these little bottles, and they're only about that big. Okay, but that's what it looks like. Important to know. If somebody's running around your home, they're probably not eye drops. It's probably e-juice. Now, the new pod-based devices, which are these. This is what a Juul looks like. You haven't seen one? They're really small. They're really easy. So you just stick it in their sleeve like that, and when you're not looking to pull it out, use it, put it back in their sleeve. They're very small, and they do, you've heard this, they do look like USBs. They're very small. This is the cartridge that goes into them. Very small cartridge. Okay, and that's where the nicotine juice, the e-juice is in these.
Can you share the YouTube?
You're not supposed to open these and add e-juice to them, but some people do. People on YouTube, you can pretty much figure out how to add anything to these, including marijuana, oils, waxes, you name it. If it can fit in here, especially if you can liquefy it, kids will figure out a way to do it. So even though the manufacturer says do not do that, you know young people. So the ones that are, so these are all the bottom middle are your Juuls, and then you've got all different kinds. You've got Soren, and again, I've got a bunch of them here if you want to come look at them afterwards. Really important is all of these e-cigarette devices contain nicotine. Some of them contain 0 amount, it says, but when tested, because these are not regulated, when tested, they tend to come out with some amount of nicotine in there. All of the newer pod-based, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, do have nicotine. So if your kid says to you, oh, there's no nicotine, no. And that's what they think, but there is a tremendous amount of nicotine. I'm going to show you how much in a minute. But please note that they all are considered tobacco products. I get yelled at by the industry, and we were saying before, I'm being trolled, I'm being yelled at, I'm being written up in newspapers about all the work I'm doing. I love it. Keep it coming. I'm really happy to have the industry hating me right now. But they keep saying, you know, these are not tobacco products. How can they be regulated under tobacco? Nicotine comes from the tobacco plant. They are tobacco products. We need to stop saying that they're not, because then we're just perpetuating the confusion of our kids. Because kids know tobacco's bad, cigarettes are bad. We have to start equating these products with a cigarette. The more we can link it, the more likely they are not to use them. Okay. So I'm going to talk about national rates, and then I'm going to dive deeper into these products. So the national rates. So on the far left, you see the cigarette. Can you all see over me? I know I'm short, but. So on the far left is cigarette use. If the gray bar is 2017, the red bar is 2018. Great news, cigarette use hovering between 5 to 4.5% of youth in the nation. These are national numbers, and this is based on past 30-day use. So have you ever used? It's not addiction, it's just using in the past 30 days. That's great. We are well below the double digit. And that's been going down and down and down and down. That's fabulous. But you get the blunts, just so it's in there. Blunts are, anybody know what blunts is? All right. The blunts are, they're not e-cigarettes, they're just in there because it's the slide. Blunts are marijuana, they are cigar leaves or cigars or the tobacco wrap and with marijuana. So basically people take a cigar, pull out the tobacco and put in the marijuana. The problem is they're still getting the tobacco from the tobacco leaf. So basically getting a little high. And so if you start doing drug testing or whatever, fine, they'll stop using the marijuana. That's we're seeing tobacco go to 19%. That's huge. And I'll show you more data on that in a minute. And then vapes with marijuana is hovering around 5%. I actually think that's higher. I think we're not calculating and asking these questions very well. What was interesting is on Friday, I was actually at the FDA testifying around some of these issues, and the vaping industry was also there, and they got up, and it was sort of academic vaping industry. It was really interesting. And not debating each other, but just giving our presentations to the FDA so they could get some data. And the industry kept saying, this proves to you that it was because of e-cigarettes that cigarettes went down. Please don't buy into that. They are temporally disconnected. Cigarettes were going down no matter what. E-cigarettes did not cause cigarette use to go down. Okay, so I don't want that. I'm going to send in a public comment that we can talk about. You can do that as well. Okay, so the other scary news is that we have 1 in 5 high school students using some form of e-cigarette. That's a 78% increase in 1 year, the last year. We've got 1 in 20 middle school students using some form of e-cigarette, which is a 48% increase over the last year. So these numbers are huge. The hypothesis is that they're Juuls and the other pod-based, and that's what's increased these numbers. Whatever it is, that's very high to have these numbers. These are back in what we used to see in the tobacco, the cigarette days. Okay. So how do they work? Oh, hello. Did I do something? All right. So basically, this is the original e-cigarette, the Cigalite. But just so you know, there's a battery in there, and then an atomizer and a coil, that's a metal piece that's in there, and that's the part that gets hot and heats up the absorbent material, the cotton, which has nicotine, propylene glycol, glycerin, flavorants, you name it. We'll talk a little bit more about what those do. But that's what's in there. And then you drip the liquid into these, and then breathe it in, either by pressing a button or just breathing it in, depending on what kind of device you have. And that's where the nicotine or the aerosol comes out. So I'm going to swig my water. Having like 4 weeks of a cold here. Okay. Then if you go to the more pod-based style, if you look at these, there's Juul, there's fixed, there's Soren, all different kinds. You've got the little cartridge that goes in, the pod it's called, which is the part on the far right. You've got, they have a cover on it, and typically the cover is the same color as the flavor it's depicting. And then again, all of these cartridges have nicotine. You ask how much nicotine? I'll tell you in a second. So chemicals that are found in these e-cigarettes. Same list that we used to talk about with cigarettes. It's the same list. It's in there. And these yellow ones are the ones that the FDA said are particularly harmful. Okay? Very scary stuff in there. I'm going to give you another way to think about it. So there's lead, which you see in a car battery. There's nickel, which is basically in cheap jewelry. You're breathing in a form of a metal. You've got toluene, which is a paint thinner. You've got benzene, which is in gasoline. You've got nitro, I can't even pronounce that, a form of nicotine, which is in pesticides. You've got cadmium, which is in battery. Formaldehyde, which is for dead tissue. You've got diacetyl, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is a buttery flavor that hurts your lungs. Of course, you have nicotine. So all of these contain nicotine, ultrafine particles, heavy metals, and other organic compounds that young people and adults, but we're worrying about youth right now, are breathing into their bodies. That is what's in these products. Now, you've got these new pod-based that came on the market, so why are we particularly concerned about those? These new pod-based products, the Juuls, the Fix, the Soren, they have what's called a salt-based nicotine. The other products in cigarettes have a free-based nicotine. Not like free-based other drugs, but a free-based nicotine. And I'm not a biochemist, others in the audience might be able to explain it better, but basically the process is similar, but these use benzoic acid to basically make it so that it is easier. The other ones used ammonia, cigarettes, and ammonia basically increased the effect of the nicotine, made it hit the brain faster, and that way you become addicted faster, and the addiction basically sticks. You are more likely to become addicted. So they manipulated the nicotine by adding ammonia. These do a different, they play with the charge, acid bases, positive, negative charges in a different way by adding benzoic acid. You add benzoic acid, and basically what happens is it just makes it easier to use. And by making it easier to use, it absorbs faster. It also makes you have that more hit, the more intense nicotine addiction rush. It's very scary. If you wonder why kids can use these so easily, why they don't sort of go, oh, and start coughing and throw it away, it's this benzoic acid or the certain kind of salt-based nicotine that makes it easier for them to use. That's why when I talk to young people, I ask how often are you using them. You're using a tremendous amount of these pods because it's so easy to use. Okay. And then there's also all the other scary things in there. We've only had these on the market for a couple of years. We've only had e-cigarettes on the market since 2007. Question marks because it took us 50 years to figure out what was in a cigarette. We don't know everything that's in here yet. So why should I care? All right. Anybody know, well, you can read up there, but how many cigarettes are in a pack of cigarettes? 20. Okay. So basically for cigarettes, each cigarette you tend to absorb about 8 milligrams worth of nicotine if you use the whole thing. But if you've ever smoked, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but if you've ever smoked or you know people have, you would smolder down. You wouldn't necessarily get every drop of that nicotine. With an e-cigarette of any of these sort, basically what you press is what you get into your body. So it's not just evaporating into the air or smoldering down. It's just sitting in the pod and sitting in the vape pen or in the e-cigarette until you press the button and breathe it in. So in that case, if you look at the amount of nicotine in 1 Juul pod, actually I'm going to play something. Who can see in the dark? Anybody younger than me who can see in the dark? I cannot. How much nicotine is in there? Anybody have a phone that can read? Has good eyes? There you go. How much nicotine is in there? Yep, thank you. Does not say. You knew that was going to be right. It's your question. All right. But what it does say is 5%. These things say 5%. What does 5% mean? Anybody know what 5% nicotine means? I mean, you have your 0 to 4% milk. Did you know whole milk is 4%? Probably didn't know that. So what's 5%? Probably isn't that much. 1.5 packs of cigarette is the equivalent in 1 of these pods. 1. The pod is that big. Okay? And I'm not trying to scare you guys. I'm trying to be honest with you and tell you what's going on. It's all science-based. 1.5 to 2 packs of cigarettes equivalent 59 milligrams per milliliter. Juul pods are 0.7 milliliters. So if you do the math, it's about 42 milligrams in here. And if you smoke a cigarette down to about 1 to 2 milligrams, you're looking at 20 to 40 milligrams worth in a cigarette pack, depending on how you smoke it. So this is 1 to 2 pods, right, packs of cigarettes right in each one of these pods, not in the whole thing. Okay. If you then look at the next one, which is the fix, you're looking at least 2 packs, and the Soren, which are a little bit bigger, is at least 3 packs in each one of those packets that they have. Okay. So why do we care? What's the effect? So let's talk about the nicotine on the body, first of all. There's tremendous brain effects that come. By the way, when I was introduced, thank you, Samina, you were talking about the toolkit. I'll tell you about the toolkit at the end. Most of these slides, especially the ones that you see, the little toolkit symbol, come from the toolkit, and I'm telling you that because I'll preempt my end. If you like what we're saying, we do come and talk, not directly to your kids. We could, we prefer not to. We prefer to do train the trainer. We come teach your teachers how to talk to your kids, and they'll use these slides. Plus cool activities and all kinds of fun things that we have in those toolkits. So if you're wondering what that little symbol is, these all come from there. So nicotine, it's obviously highly addictive. It actually changes the brain. It changes the brain chemistry. It stimulates the pleasure center. So it comes to the point where you're excited, you're feeling good. And by the way, this is true for marijuana. You were asking about very similar process to marijuana. It hijacks the reward system. So whether you're getting pleasure from exercising or from feeling good or giving a talk or running a mile or whatever it is, this is what's making you think that you feel good. But in reality, it's not. It's a drug. And actually, the main reason why you feel good is if you stop using it, you go through a withdrawal, and then you use it again, and you feel better. So that's part of the problem, but it actually changes your brain chemistry, and we can go into it another time if you want to know why. The other thing is this, you give nicotine to your brain. During adolescence, your brain is developing. Your brain says, awesome, anything you put into me, I'll be excited about because I'm developing and I'm figuring out what inputs I want into my brain and getting rid of the things I don't want. Some of you may have heard about this as pruning away the things you don't want, annihilating the things you're keeping. I always think like a freeway. You get rid of the off-ramps and on-ramps and roads that you don't need, and the ones you do, you pave over so you're smoother. So you're still getting from A to B, just like a full-fledged adult, but you're not quite as efficient, and then suddenly you become more efficient. Well, while this is all going on, your brain is deciding, what do I keep and what do I not keep? We already have receptors in our brain for the nicotine. You introduce nicotine while this process is going on in your brain says, awesome. I have a place for that. I have a road for that. I'm going to put that on my road, and I will not get rid of that road because now I think you need me. And so then you become not only addicted, but more susceptible for other forms of addiction. Okay? So that's what's changing. Then when you take that nicotine away, the road's there saying, I'm hungry, give me more. And you become in this cycle of addiction that happens. It can happen as an adult, but it's particularly important to stop this before the age of 25. That's when the brain mostly develops. So it goes to about 25. The other thing with nicotine is it can slow down development in terms of learning and memory, as well as attention and behavior. And part of that is basically hijacking this reward system, and you're sitting in class going, I need to smoke, I need to smoke, I need to use, and it's much harder to have that attention. It can also influence mood disorders like anxiety and depression, and kids who are more anxious and more depressed tend to self-medicate by using these products. And they can also affect impulse control, and like I said, increase your risk of other addictions. So there are true harms that go along with just the nicotine in these products. Even if there was none of the other chemicals, just the nicotine is bad. We know that 90% of adults who smoke now became addicted as an adolescent. 90%. We don't know about Juuls because we haven't had them long enough. We don't know about vapes, they haven't been on the market, but we're aware of cigarettes that that's the case. So what are some of the other health effects? You have this sheet, if you got it from the back, one of our fact sheets in the toolkit. You can bring this home and use it as a starting point to talk to your young people about it if you want. I won't read you all the details, but basically the other thing is, in addition to your lifelong addiction, that can happen, the health effects of all of these different vape pens are the ear, eye, and throat irritation. You can have chemical residue. You can have cardiovascular disease, and then lung disease, which we're going to talk about in a second. So all these things can happen as a result of using vapes. Then benzoic acid. We're not meant to be inhaling benzoic acid. It's a very scary thing to be using. What happens? It also irritates the lungs, the nose, and the throat, shortness of breath. If you touch it, which again can happen if young people break these things apart. And actually, I have one of them here. I don't know if I brought it. That actually the package is breaking. Not from us, it just is. And you can see in the package the liquid coming out. If you touch that stuff, it can affect your skin. So a lot of worry there. And then respiratory effects. That's the other thing of the flavors, which we'll talk about the types of flavors, but basically flavors which tend to come from something called diacetyl, which is the buttery flavor, but there's also vanillin, cinnamaldehyde, cinnamon, vanilla flavor, things like that. Those actually are being shown to affect your lungs and to affect your respiratory circumstance. And basically there's something called GRAS from the FDA, generalized recognized as safe. So you can take something like vanilla, or you can take something like Cheetos, or Cheetos flavoring, and you can eat it, but if you heat it and inhale it, that is not safe anymore. So it's generally recognized as safe for eating, but not for inhaling, and that's part of the problem. And then the last real worry that I have is that we also have data that show pretty definitively that if a young person uses e-cigarettes, they are 4 times more likely to switch over to using a cigarette. Okay? 4 times more likely for that to happen. That's another problem. So you may say to me, but Bonnie, aren't these good for adults? I keep hearing that. Okay, well, first of all, most important is, I'm not talking about adults. Adults can do what you want. Your brains are developed. You're adults. You can consent for yourself. You pay your own health insurance. Go have a good time. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Same thing with marijuana. I worry about the kids. But second, I will set the data straight on this. Yes, originally these e-cigarettes and vapes started out, at least according to the industry, as a way to stop adults from using cigarettes. There are no good data out there to suggest that that's actually happening. Yes, my Aunt Sally Bonnie, she stopped smoking using e-cigarettes. Great. My Uncle John, great. But as a population level and as a scientist, and I bring the science to you, there is no good evidence to suggest that really, or to even conclude, that adults who are smoking cigarettes stop by using e-cigarettes of any form. If anything, they wind up using both. They become cigarette and e-cigarette, what we call dual or poly users, and get even more addicted. Okay, important to know that. All right, so why do youth use? I'm going to just play a quick video for you. Yes. The sound's not great, so.
There's a lot of other things in my life. Like, I don't have just nicotine or Juuls and everything else.
Junior, who wishes not to have his face shown, felt the effects of Juul quickly.
I had it at first, it was pretty funny, like I just didn't know what to do for a whole minute or so, and then I started seeing more of it. My parents don't really know what it is, so they just leave it flashlight.
Okay, so friends, his parents don't know what it is. He didn't think it was any big deal. He just started using it and thought it was cool. That's why kids are using it. So let's talk about it. There are many reasons, but we're going to talk about 4 things in particular. Flavors, the change in social norms, and the perceptions or misperceptions of risk, the marketing, and the cost. Let's talk about flavors. Anybody want to guess how many flavors there are of vapes overall? Not just Juuls. Vapes as a general. 20? 40. Hundreds? There are 15,000 flavors. Now I'm in a huge battle, so I'm going to be political. May I be political for 1 second?
Sure.
Not federal level politics. Not that kind of politics. I could be, but I won't. I'm going to be political. Right now, San Francisco already banned flavors. There are other cities who are thinking about banning flavors. All flavored tobacco products. The state of California just put in a bill to ban flavors. I helped provide some data for it. If you're into advocacy, I'd love to talk to you about how you can help with the flavor ban. At the federal level, just at the FDA, and my talk basically was, amongst other things, you need to ban flavors. Kids are using these products because of the flavors. And the vaping industry, who hates me, would say, oh, come on, these are for adults. How many adults in this room really want to use honey doo-doo? How many want to use booger sugar or dragon's blood? Okay? So I always get one small like parent, I'll use cherry. Yeah, probably, but generally these flavors are not for adults. You do not, if you're a smoker, you do not need these flavors to stop using cigarettes. These are for the kids. Okay. And kids tell us, and I'll show you some data, that they probably would not have ever used an e-cigarette if it weren't for the flavors. And in fact, there used to be, I haven't looked more recently, but there used to be commercials, particularly targeted at girls, that say, don't eat your dessert, vape it. Okay? A huge issue going on with the flavors. Now, thankfully, Juuls only comes in 8 flavors as of now, but they do have cucumber, mango, creme, which used to be called creme brulee, and they got in a lot of trouble for that because of the whole vape flavors. So they substitute creme and then fruit. Sorry. So, currently the federal level, the FDA, is considering a ban on all the flavors but mint. but I'm going to show you, I think I'm going to show you, if not, let me just tell you in case I'm wrong. We have data that we published in the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, in October that showed that about 20% of the teens in our study who were using Juuls are using mint. So if you're going to get another flavor ban, it's all the flavors including mint that really need to go because kids are using mint. It's like gum. It's cool, it's refreshing, it's great. They're using it. So some data that we have. This was pre-Juul, but this is since e-cigarettes. One of the kids in our study said, oh, I use that all day. I just keep it with me in my pocket, and when I felt like having a taste of something flavory, I just take a hit. When you smell like blue raspberry and green apple, no one is going to question why you smell like that. Okay, one of the important things I want you to take away from this, aside from the fact that flavors are attractive, is if you go into your kid's room, and your kid's room smells like blueberry, strawberry, banana, I don't think they're eating fruit salad. Okay? Please realize that. If the windows are open and it's 40 degrees out, they may be using a product. You're not going to go in and smell skunk marijuana or tobacco. It's just not there anymore. They're not using it, and that's not where you smell it. Anybody ever been next to somebody using some flavored e-cig? It smells kind of good. Yeah, it doesn't smell bad. That is a problem, and that's something you have to work a job for. So let's talk about this changing norms. Susan, kids say it's really hyped up like no nicotine. That's what everyone's saying. There's no nicotine. It's good for you because it's vapor, just water vapor. Okay, this is a really important thing, and this is what it looks like to kids. It's a really important thing to realize that they think that it's just harmless water vapor. We actually have an activity in our toolkit where we take a bottle of either aerosolized deodorant or hairspray and then a bottle of just spray water, and we spray it on our hair, spray it on the floor, spray it on somebody's hand, and ask the difference and basically get them to realize that one is truly aerosolized water or vapor, and the other one is actually chemicals, and it's going to dry differently on your hand, and therefore trying to show them that there are different things in there, and try to get them to stop calling it water vapor, because they are not. So that's important, but it's a big misnomer about it. The other thing about these, this is not so much Juul or the pod-based, but the other e-cigarettes, they come up with this big plume. A lot of kids are now trying to have, for a couple of years now, are having contests. You can have vapor blowing contests and actually go to places and win money and win contests based on how big of a plume you can blow and can you do smoke rings and tricks with it. My daughter, when she was 17, is the one that brought this to my attention, who periodically goes on YouTube, said, here's an example, Mom, of what I'm seeing. This is all over YouTube. So teens tell us, I feel that I didn't have to always go outside to smoke a cigarette or have to light it or deal with ash and a harsh odor. Cigarette smoke stays on you and the e-cigarettes don't at all because there's no scent. Okay, really important to realize. However, saying this also, there is some evidence that there is secondhand vape and third-hand vape. So that you could get asthma. Newer data suggests that you can get asthma if you're exposed to these products. And also, new data showing that actually it settles in to the carpets, to the floors, and to the chairs and on your body, and turns into toxic chemicals there as well. So there are some problems. And then, I'm going to go to this one. People always tell you smoking's bad, and cigarettes and tobacco's bad, but if you smoke regular with just water, it's not bad because you take up the tobacco and cigarette smoke. That's what people think. So I am going to show you Palo Alto data, but in general, I'm mostly showing you quotes and general ideas. I do have actual articles and numbers for any of this that you're interested in that we've published. But basically what we see across the board is adolescents and young adults think that these products are less harmful, not only overall in terms of lung cancer, which maybe that's true, but heart attack, cardiovascular risk, as well as addiction, and they're not. We don't have any clear evidence that that's true. So Samita sent me the data from the Healthy Kids Survey, California Healthy Kids Survey. So to just give you a quick snapshot of your young people in terms of their perception of the harm, if they use it occasionally, they basically what you see is in the younger grades, you see about 72% think that there's some harm, that you see about 36% think that there's no harm in using it. If you're looking at the older. Now, that's still, most people do think that there's some harm to it, that's great. But 36%, you know, again, one in five is using it. So these are still pretty high numbers of people who think that there's no harm to them. And if you talk about using it several times a day, only about 20% of the middle and high school students think that there's no harm. 20% think that there's no harm. Still 1 in 5 kids thinking that there's no big deal in using these. That's a problem. And we need to talk to them. So a little bit more, let's talk about marketing. If you see this sign on the lower right, that's the Juuls sign. If you see kids using that, they're probably signaling to each other that they're interested in using Juuls. You've got all kinds of marketing. I could show you pages and pages and pages of marketing. You can Google CNN. They did a really good write-up about my colleague at Stanford, his research on this. Lots and lots. Juul has spent so little money directly in marketing because they do it for free through social media and they get the kids to do it for them. You just simply take a picture of yourself using it, you Juul it out, you text it out there, Juul it out there. You text it out there, you put it on social media, and you, boom, have your free media done for you. It's happening. And then you get these kinds of things. So even with Juul, we're in a battle because they keep saying, oh, there's no way, Juul's saying, no, we're not targeting adolescents. Okay, well, first of all, you have flavors. Second of all, you have a stealth product that I can easily hide and does not produce that big smell and big bloom. Third of all, you have 5% nicotine, which you don't tell us what it is, but we know that it's equivalent to 1.5 to 2 packs. Third, which I didn't tell you yet, or fourth, which I didn't tell you yet, which is they did go down to 3%, yay, nicotine, but not in the used flavors, okay? So, and then finally, you have things like this on the left. Now, how old do you think she is on the left? 15? Yeah. She's probably an adult, but she looks very, very young. Do you really think they're not marketing to kids? Anybody know who it is on the right? Looks like who? It looks like Emma. It's not. It's a lookalike. I find this so disgusting. My whole life was so angry when we got this. So basically on the right, this is blue. This is not, this is a different form of a pod base, not Juuls. But basically they're taking an image of somebody who you may or may not know, but every high school kid out there knows who this is. And you show them this, and it's just normalizing everything that they're using and saying that it's okay. And that's another huge problem. So what we try to do when we talk to young people is we show them this. I didn't bring it, but we have a whole bunch of different ads where we strip out the message, but we just show the pictures, and we said do what's called counter marketing. So now what would you say about this? And then put those around your school, and that becomes your anti-messaging. And it's a way of countering what the industry is doing. And it's pretty powerful to do that. Finally, cost. People ask me about it. We see these kinds of signs all the time, student discounts. Okay? And I'm sorry, do you know what the legal age for using tobacco and nicotine is in California?
18.
21. It's 21. There was a law that passed very recently. Thrilled about that law. I was on the IOM committee that supported, the IOM cannot support. The IOM gave evidence that basically gave evidence saying that if we go to 21, we're going to significantly, this was years ago, by the way, a few years ago, we significantly reduce the morbidity and mortality of young people. Most students are under 21 now. You see a sign like this, you go on in, they may or may not card you. I have a lot of young people who say, I don't get carded, especially if it's a lower nicotine product. How else are they getting it? They're getting it through these Amazon lockers. Anybody ever seen these or use these? Know about these? All you have to do is click, by the way, to say that you're over 21 or over 18 in other states, and then you get it sent to a locker like this. Nobody's checking IDs and checking your age when you pick this up. Or if you live in one of my colleagues lives in New York in a high-rise apartment, she has a doorman. She said, are you kidding? All the kids have to do is say, hey, Mr. So-and-so to the doorman, I just bought a present for my mom, it's her birthday, I don't want her to know, can you sign for it? It's really easy to bypass these access laws. Okay, Juuls, how much are they? Just the starter pack. The starter pack is $35. That's expensive. After that, these 4 packs right here, $16. $16. A pack of cigarettes is 10. If you do the math, Basically, 4 packs of cigarettes is about $38. 4 of these is $16. This is equivalent to 4 to 8 packs of cigarettes. They are so much less expensive. Another big problem that we have right now. So much less expensive. And then finally, access from the data, thank you, that you gave me, is that you asked Palo Alto students about their perceptions of ease of getting all of these e-cigarettes. 7th graders said, 19% said it's easier, very easy. 67% of grade 11 said it was easy. I asked my kid, and hopefully she'd know from experience, but she's 18 and a half now and doing great in college, what am I going to say? No. But no, I know, she actually did research with us. We know what she's doing. But anyway, I said to her, hey, would you know where to get marijuana, where to get this stuff? Oh God, Mom, are you kidding? So easy. I have no, don't tell me. I have no idea how to get this stuff. I do Juuls, not the illegal stuff. I have no idea. She said, oh, it's really easy. These kids know where to go, who to get from, and how to get it from. It's not hard, despite the laws. So right now, in terms of advocacy, so the FDA is considering banning sales of these products in convenience stores and gas stations. It's not where kids are going. The kids are getting it from online, from the internet, from the Amazon, from Juuls stores, and from each other. Okay? They're getting them from each other. Not very hard to find somebody who's 21 or looks 21, and they buy a whole bunch, and then they make profit off of it and get it from you, give it to you. So what can you do? And then we'll do some questions. Stay informed. Come to the meetings like this. Talk to your friends about it. Talk to the other parents. Reach out with the PTA. Thank you for doing this. That's important. Talk to your children. And by the way, if those of you who are parents of elementary, it is not too early to start. When my younger one was 3 years old, we were at a park. This was way before Juuls, or e-cig, and she saw a cigarette, and she said, "Ma, is that a cigarette bud?" She couldn't talk, right, or pronounce it well. I was so proud that she knew what one looked like and that it was gross. And she'd be the one to walk down the street and loudly say, "That guy's smoking, it's gross." Shh, you're gonna get hit. But I talk to them so much about these things. Talk to them. Be an advocate. Happy to help you do that. Talk to your healthcare providers. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Drug testing, I'll talk to you about that in a second. And then again, talk to your kids. All right, so one of the things to look for if you're worried about this is you may see a change in clothing. Maybe they're starting to wear Juul signs. Maybe they're starting to carry vapes, or maybe they're carrying something that looks like a USB. If you see a bunch of these, you probably can see it when you come up, you see a bunch of these little chargers running around your house, because all you have to do to charge these, stick it in there. If you see something that looks like that around your house, it's probably some sort of an e-cigarette. So keep an eye on that. If you're seeing depression or withdrawal symptoms, if there's anxiety going on, now, if your kid's anxious, it's different, but if you're seeing a change in behavior, they may be going through some sort of withdrawal or use of it. Moodiness. If you're seeing that they're just not wanting to talk to you a lot, maybe because they want to go use these products, or maybe they're embarrassed or they don't want you to smell their breath. If you're seeing problems in school performance, or truancy, or any other physical changes, doesn't mean that's because they're using some form of drug, but it's a sign that they may be. So talking to your healthcare providers, there's nothing wrong. So anybody, you know about sensitive service laws in the state of California, at the age of 12 up, basically no healthcare provider can talk to you about anything involving sex, drugs, mental health. Okay, nicotine falls under that. So they can't come out and tell, but you can say at the next appointment, and email your provider and say, "I'm suspicious that Johnny is using," and then step out of the room and let that person take care of it. Hopefully they're asking anyway, and hopefully they're having you step out of the room and they're having that confidential conversation with your adolescent, but if they're not, you should be requesting it. Somebody needs to be talking to your young people and asking about it. There are some treatments, but they're not. If anybody has a kid who they think is addicted, we can talk privately about that. There are no currently evaluated nicotine replacement therapies for kids, anybody under 18, but the FDA is looking into that right now. We can talk about that. Drug testing. You cannot bring your adolescent to a healthcare provider and say, "Drug test my kid." The provider cannot because of those sensitive service laws. But the provider can do it on their own if they worry, or the kid can ask for it to be tested, done, but you cannot ask your provider to do it. You can test at home. I know people have done it. The problem is that the results are so inconsistent. You can get a false negative or a false positive, and what are you going to do with that result? And how are you going to trust your kid? So my recommendation would be, you can do what you want, but would be talk to them. Talk about it. Bring some of these materials home. We have these questions that you can ask them. These are meant to be starting questions, and I'll give you a few others on here. So the goal is to have a conversation, not to be a lecturer. So find the right time. I used to have friends when we were talking about sexual behavior, my adolescent development friends would say, I'm scheduling an appointment with my kids on June 13th at noon to talk about sex. Not going to work. Find times to talk about it. Hey, Johnny, I went to this talk tonight. Or maybe tomorrow night because it's late, they're doing homework, whatever. I went to this talk. Have you ever heard of this? I'd love to talk about it. You don't have to ask them if they're doing it, but talk about it. Bring some of the fact sheets home and say, I'm concerned about this. And by the way, if you or your friends are doing this, I would be here to help you, rather than be punitive about it. You want to open that dialogue. Instead of, what do we need to talk, it's what do you think about? Don't say things like, you don't do this, right? What are they going to say? Well, actually, you're wrong. That just doesn't work very well. So use the right words. Vaping, juuling. Don't go with the e-cigarette. They're going to say, yeah, right. And then keep continuing that conversation. It is not a one-time drop-in. Keep it going. A couple of places you can get involved. One, come talk to me. Would love to partner with you. I'm right across the street, as I said. Stay informed, stay active. There's another organization specifically for parents. We've been partnering together. They're based in New York, called PAVE, Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes, and I can tell you more about that in person. The FDA, until the deadline is February 1st, so you don't have a lot of time, they are taking public comments. So if you have your own stories, and you probably don't want to say it out loud here, but I'm happy to talk one-on-one. If you have your own stories about kids who have been vaping, your kids, your own stories, the FDA needs to hear about that. I'm going to write a 20-page scientific comment with all the data I talked about and all the references. They've got people doing that. They need parents, they need kids, and they need healthcare providers to say, I'm seeing this, the fire alarms, these are the things I'm worried about, and talk to the FDA that way, because that's how they're going to act on it. I'm almost done. The Tobacco Prevention Toolkit, there are brochures out there as well, and even a sticker, some stickers on our cards. These are they. Basically, we've got our toolkit. We have talks, we have interactive activities, we have quizzes, we have fact sheets. So these are for adults, by the way. They're not so much for kids, but we've got all kinds of fun things. It's a very huge toolkit. If you go online, it's free. And we come and teach schools for free how to use it. So here's my information. So, like I said, this is a whole new world that we're in. We need to stay vigilant. We need to stay active. We need to keep talking to our young people and stay informed as much as you can. If you follow us, by the way, on our Twitter, any new data that come out on these products, any new interventions, any preventions, anytime that we go out and do it, we'll put it on there. And so please consider following or liking or whatever you do on there because you'll get a lot of information and we'll also send out newsletters quarterly. So questions? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your explanation.
I'm just going to stop the recording so you can speak freely under question.
Okay, go ahead.
I think there's no doubt that it's a national health issue.